This week on Jerusalem Dateline, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu warns Israel is ready to go it alone to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons.
I've always said, if we have to, we'll stand alone. Iran will not get nuclear weapons. It will not turn Syria into a military base against Israel.
Plus, big news in Washington. The all-time bestseller, The Book of Books, gets its own museum. See how Israeli archaeologists help. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. The U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee unanimously passed the Taylor Force Act. The legislation would cut U.S. funding to the Palestinian Authority unless it stops paying monthly salaries to families of terrorists who have killed Israelis. Many believe the legislation will help stop what some call pay to slay. What would you say if you found out your tax dollars were indirectly going to pay Palestinian terrorists to murder Israeli Jews and others? That's just what's happening.
Since 2003, it has been Palestinian law to reward Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails with a monthly paycheck. Palestinian leadership also pays the families of Palestinian prisoners and suicide bombers. These policies incentivize terrorism.
The practice is known as pay to slay. The Taylor Force Act gets its name from the American combat veteran murdered while on a school trip in Israel. The 21-year-old terrorist behind the brutal stabbing of Force was killed by police, but he was praised by the Palestinian Authority government and his family given lifelong financial compensation. Kinds of compensation include pension for life, triple the average salary in Palestinian areas, free tuition, health insurance, and a clothing allowance for life, and a free monthly stipend. And that's where this current legislation draws the line. Congressman Ed Royce, chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, says stopping that practice, courtesy of $300 million U.S. tax dollars every year, is what's behind the Taylor Force Act.
With this legislation, we are forcing the PA to choose between U.S. assistance and these morally reprehensible policies.
Despite earlier pressure from Congress to stop these payments, the Palestinian Authority has actually increased the amount paid to terrorists whom they consider martyrs. The payments are on a sliding scale. The more successful the attack, the bigger the payout. In the 2017 PA budget, money to terrorist prisoners increased by 13%, and 4% more went to their families, more than 30,000 recipients in all. This year, direct funding of terrorism has reached $355 million, and yet the PA is largely funded by U.S. taxpayer dollars.
The Palestinian Authority claims to its people that they have a right to kill Israelis, literally a right to kill Israeli civilians, a right to kill women, children, babies, and they claim that a UN decision from the 1970s, which said that the Palestinians have the right to use all means to gain their rights, means they have a right to kill civilians.
Palestinian Media Watch director Itamar Marcus said while Israel has means to crack down on terrorists, the West can play a major role.
The Palestinian Authority is so dependent on foreign aid. The United States gives them foreign aid. The European Union gives them foreign aid. Most of the Western European countries give them. They have the power to stop this.
The House Foreign Affairs Committee passage of the Taylor Force Act aims to do just that. The measures are expected to pass the full House and go on to the Senate. Pay to slay is one of the issues facing Israel. To talk more about this and other issues in the Middle East, I'm joined here in our CBN studio by Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl, and in our Virginia Beach studio is CBN senior editor John Waggy. Julie, talking about pay to slay, there are some reservations that people do have about the legislation.
Yes, it's important to point out that this legislation is it's good. It's good they did it, but it's a weakened version. Some of the reservations beforehand on the other side would be that if the U.S. were to cut funding to the PA, it could cause the collapse of the PA, which would further, perhaps
destabilize the
right,
area.
right, and maybe bring Hamas into the picture further or whatever. Now, because it's been watered down, people are saying, well, you know, it's so watered down, it's not really going to have a very big impact because the funds are fungible, the funds that the U.S. still does pay to them, so they can move it around however they want to.
Right. John, turning to you, one of the big issues here in the Middle East is the growing influence of Iran inside Syria. And here's what Bibi Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, had to say about Israel if it had to go it alone.
We must all work together to stop Iran's aggression, its worldwide campaign of terror, and its pursuit of nuclear weapons. I think if we stand together, we're going to achieve it. But I've always said, if we have to, we'll stand alone. Iran will not get nuclear weapons. It will not turn Syria into a military base against Israel.
John, do you think that with this growing influence of Iran and Israel's willingness to go it alone, do you think the Middle East is getting closer to war?
You know, Chris, the question of whether the Middle East is getting closer to war is kind of like the question about when is the Lord going to return. You know it's getting closer, you know it's going to happen, but you don't know the time frame. We could be weeks away, we could be months away, we still could be years away, because this situation with Iran has been dragging out for the last 40 years nearly, and nobody has stopped Iran until now. Now you have the Soviet Union saying that Iran's presence in Syria, right next to Israel, is a legitimate presence. That is very problematic for the entire Middle East and especially for Israel. So I think that this has ratcheted up the seriousness of it, but we don't know exactly what kind of time frame this is going to take. But it's certainly leading to a potential conflict, and not a small one, a fairly large one.
John, one other development recently is the resignation of Hariri, Lebanon's prime minister. Do you think this puts Saudi Arabia and Iran on a collision course?
Well, Iran and Saudi Arabia are definitely on a collision course, and this is symptomatic of a 1,500-year-old battle between Sunnis and Shias. So it's being resurrected now in the 21st century, and it's one that's really sliding toward a serious situation, because you've got Gulf states, you've got nations bordering Iran, all taking sides in this, and Lebanon is really ground zero for the conflict. And the departure of Hariri to Saudi Arabia, the last Sunni big leader there, is one that could jeopardize Lebanon especially, because Lebanon has been a hotbed of activity for Hezbollah for a long time. And Hezbollah has been very effective, not only in harassing Israel, but in consolidating its power, helping Assad to retake Syria after it looked like in the last 6 years of civil war that he was going to collapse. And now you've got Assad strengthening, Moscow happy, the Saudis upset and not willing to tolerate this, and a real potential for a Sunni-Shia conflagration with Lebanon at its center.
Well, Julie, here in Israel, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pledged humanitarian aid to Iraq and Iran after their horrific earthquake. Here's what he had to say.
Now, I just saw the pictures of the destruction in Iran and Iraq following this week's earthquake. And I saw these heartbreaking images of men and women and children buried under the rubble. So I'm proud to announce tonight that a few hours ago, I directed that we offer the Red Cross medical assistance for the Iraqi and Iranian victims of this disaster.
Julie, why would Israel, the Jewish state, offer aid to a country that's really sworn to annihilate the Jewish state?
You know, Israel really doesn't have something against any of its neighbors. You know, Israel would step up and do peace with any of its neighbors at any moment. They just don't want to be destroyed. So as far as the Iranian people, you know, there's a long history, a biblical history between Israel and the Persians. That's Iran. You know, it was King Cyrus who sent the Jewish people back to the land of Israel thousands of years ago. So Israel actually had a good relationship with Iran, with Persia, before the recent, you know, the last decades with the regime. So Israel is, you know, reaching out, really wants to help the people.
Right. And I guess this is part of Israel's calling as being a light to the nations.
Yes, it is, and yeah, I think the Prime Minister says that that it is. It's kind of turning the other cheek, really, saying okay, you want to kill us, you want to wipe us off the map, but we don't feel that way towards you. We're willing to even help you in your need.
Well, Julie, appreciate your insight and expertise, and John, thank you from Virginia Beach.
Thank you
for your expertise and insight into what's happening here in the Middle East. Coming up, a one-of-a-kind museum opens in Washington after thousands of years in the making. A new attraction is opening in Washington, D.C. that has its roots in the Middle East and has been thousands of years in the making. After nearly 3 years in construction, the Museum of the Bible officially opens its doors. It's the first museum in the U.S. dedicated solely to God's holy word. And it's opening just a few blocks away from the U.S. Capitol. CBN reporter John Jessup gives us this behind-the-scenes tour.
Hello and welcome. I'm John Jessup with this behind-the-scenes look at the Museum of the Bible, the newest museum in the heart of the nation's capital. All 8 stories and 430,000 square feet to explore the history and impact of the world's best-selling book. Walk past the bronze gates and into the grand lobby, and the very first thing you'll see is this 140-foot-long digital LED display boasting a breathtaking, rotating, colorful pictorial canopy. It's the first glimpse at the museum's technological edge. But it's not all gadgets, bells, and whistles here. As you climb into the elevators, digital screens virtually transport guests to ancient Israel, a preparation of what you'll find on the 5th floor. Pottery, jewelry, weapons, and other relics from ancient Israel, including this 1-ton stone from Jerusalem's western wall. Some of the pieces date back 1,700 years before the birth of Christ. While most visitors will probably want to see the collection of Dead Sea Scroll fragments, there's so much more, including an entire floor dedicated to the history of the Bible, where you can explore galleries and exhibits that trace the origins and evolution of the good book. You can also browse through the museum's collection of Bibles translated in more than 600 written languages.
No other book has had such an impact on civilization, particularly Western civilization. So it's exciting to know that we're a part of exposing this book and getting people engaged from all walks of life.
The Impact Floor highlights the Bible's effect on culture, science, music, film, and more, and chronicles how it shaped America's founding and still reverberates today. A museum for all, there's even a children's area that allows kids to walk through stories of the Bible and follow the courageous decisions of people like Esther, Joseph, David, and Noah. And there's even a 470-seat performance theater, the Museum of the Bible's world stage, now featuring the Broadway musical Amazing Grace. So we've just made our way to the top of the Museum of the Bible, where you will find a biblical garden. This peaceful oasis provides an escape from the busyness of the city, featuring Jerusalem stone and plants similar to ones found in the Middle East. And it draws on scriptural references to gardens in the books of Genesis, Revelation, and Psalm 23.
Green pastures and also the still waters. So those are some of the character that I wanted to embody, because I wanted this to be a calming space, one that would kind of restore your soul, so to speak, when you're here.
And speaking of resting, oh, I'm sorry, there's just so much to see. I was taking a quick break. On this floor, it's the narrative floor, where you get to see what it was like for people to live during the time. So here, you'll get to see, experience, and even hear the sounds of what people in the first century in Nazareth experienced. The museum has taken a decidedly non-sectarian approach, saying its mission is to help people engage with the Bible and bring its rich stories to life. With a $500 million investment and global cultural and scholastic partnerships, it hopes that mission translates into more people reading and appreciating the best-selling book of all time. Well, thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this tour as much as we enjoyed giving it. You know, I had such a good time. I'm going to go back in for a second look. For CBN News, I'm John Jessup. We'll see you around next time.
One of the Israeli dignitaries to attend the opening of the Museum of the Bible is Israel's tourism minister, Yariv Levin. He visited our CBN News Bureau in Washington and spoke about the significance of the Museum of the Bible.
When we are able to bring exhibits from the Holy Land. We can bring the story of the Bible to everyone, everywhere, and especially here and in such a magnificent way. I think it contributes a lot, not only to those who visit the museum, but also to the spatial alliance between our countries.
Up next, see how Israel is involved in Washington's new Museum of the Bible.
I think one of the most emotional artifacts in exhibition will be a one-ton stone from the Western Wall that people can touch.
The minds behind DC's new Museum of the Bible are making sure to include the historic land of the Bible to give visitors a more complete experience. And as I found out, there couldn't be a more natural fit. Visitors to most museums are greeted with don't touch signs when it comes to ancient artifacts, but not here.
For sure, I think one of the most emotional artifacts in exhibition will be a one-ton stone from the Western Wall that people can touch.
For centuries, people from all around the world have come here to Jerusalem to pray at the Western Wall. Now, one of these stones from the Roman destruction of the Jewish temple made the journey to the U.S. to be part of the new Museum of the Bible.
And we have actually a label said, "Touch me," because we think that we would like to see and feel the connection between being in the States and touching a stone from Jerusalem from the 1st century BCE.
Deborah Ben-Ami is a curator for the Israel Antiquities Authority.
The idea of the exhibition is to show the archaeology of the Israel and the story in the times of the Bible, in the times of the Old Testament and the New Testament, showing the people of the land. This is the name of the exhibition, and showing the different cultures of the land, from the Canaanites, Philistines, Israelites, Edomites, Second Temple period, Byzantine times.
There are some 800 artifacts on permanent exhibit, all excavated in Israel. CBN News spoke with Ben-Ami at the IAA warehouse outside Jerusalem, where workers crated the items and shipped them to the U.S.
We have a special crate and we get it in a plane. It's sometimes challenging to put it in place. It's difficult, but not impossible.
Ben-Ami helped design the museum's Israel exhibit. They installed the Western Wall stone and other artifacts like this piece from Herod's palace at Masada. There's also an area that ensures return visitors see something new.
We call the gallery New Discoveries from Israel. So this will be a temporary gallery to show new discoveries each year.
The first will feature glass production in Israel.
This is not only important, it's a really beautiful one. And a new discovery of a hoard of metal artifacts from the Roman period from a ship in the underwater in Caesarea.
While artifacts are often loaned for temporary showings, this is the first time the Antiquities Authority has created a permanent exhibition outside of Israel. It's an opportunity to get a glimpse of the Holy Land without visiting the Middle East. 4 years ago, before construction crews had broken ground for the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., the Green family loaned most of the material for a unique year-long exhibit on the Bible in Jerusalem. Take a look at that unique exhibition that was held here in Jerusalem at the Bible Lands Museum.
They call it the Book of Books. The exhibition traces the history of the Bible and the Jewish roots of Christianity, tracking the story of God's written word from the Dead Sea Scrolls to the Gutenberg Bible and beyond. Bible Lands Museum Director Amanda Weiss says there's no more important city than Jerusalem to host such an exhibit.
We've put an added effort to make it an equally balanced and important exhibition for both the Jewish audience and the Christian world.
Interactive iPads allow visitors to zoom into texts, like this genealogy from Adam to Christ. There's even an exact working replica of the 15th century Gutenberg press, which printed the famous Gutenberg Bible.
We do end the exhibition with one of the oldest biblical texts known to date, which is a blessing from Numbers 6:24 through 26. May the Lord bless you and keep you.
Most of the exhibit comes from the Green family collection. Kerry Summers is chief executive of the Green Collection. He says they want to change the notion many people have that the Bible is not readable.
We take on that challenge to provide a means for people to get comfortable reading it. It's literally one of the great rights of the world. It's fantastic, it's entertaining, it's mystery, it's everything that good movies are made of.
John Waggy, CBN News.
Coming up, cutting-edge technology brings the ancient book of books to life at the Museum of the Bible. For our final story this week, we'll take a look at how cutting-edge technology is bringing the most famous book of all time to life. CBN reporter Ben Kennedy has that story.
Right out the gate, even before you walk inside the Museum of the Bible, you're hit with technology. I know what you're thinking. This looks like something straight out of Star Trek, but it works pretty similar to the back checks you see at the airports. Once your items go inside and it gets the all clear, you're good to go. Once inside, your eyes are drawn to an awe-inspiring 140-foot digital canvas.
The idea is just to really set the tone when you walk into the museum.
And Jeff, right now we're looking at what appears to be stained glass windows.
Exactly.
Then it's time to pick up a tablet featuring cutting-edge technology, bringing the Bible to life.
You just simply place the device onto the table, and it will actually start a session to where they can personalize their tour experience.
So I gave it a try.
So if I wanted to go to Bible Now, it's on the second floor?
Yep, and you can add it to my tour.
Okay. Hit start my tour. And that's it?
That's it.
That's easy.
You just start walking.
The elevators are lined with digital screens that transport you to ancient Israel, and it may take some time to get there. We're here. Awesome. The tablet helps guide you to the world of Jesus, a journey that could make you hungry. I don't know about you, Jeff, but I am full.
Oh,
let's go walk it off.
Let's do it.
All right, I'll help you out. Oh! Don't forget the guide.
Need that.
In all seriousness, you can use the tablet to make a restaurant reservation or even translate a sign.
You just simply tap this button here. It will then turn on the camera and use augmented reality to actually recognize that sign and then return the text of that sign into your language of choice.
The final stop is upstairs at the World Stage Theater, featuring 3D projection mapping.
And it will project on the ceiling, on the walls, the front proscenium, the front screen, the walls behind you.
What does that do for a viewer's experience?
Oh, it completely immerses you into the scene. What we're really trying to do is foster engagement with the content of the Bible. We're trying to activate learning and really open up access. And technology is just a really great way to do that.
The Museum of the Bible is already thinking about the what's next. In 2018, they plan to open up a virtual reality theater. How cool is that? For CBN News, I'm Ben Kennedy.
The museum looks like an amazing attraction. Hope you get to see it if you visit Washington, D.C. You can also see more of our coverage about the Museum of the Bible on cbnnews.com. That's all for this edition. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.